Hello and welcome to episode 92 of Third and Wrong. I'm your co-host, Stephen Bolin, and I'm joined as always by Zachary Foth and Austin Dalalonga. We have a very special guest on today. He's in my fantasy football league. We grew up together with all three of us and played football together. And known Packers fan, Logan Wall. Logan, thank you for joining Third and Wrong, my friend. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, it was a classic day in Swift Current for me. So
Awesome. We love to hear that. It's cold here in Calgary, as I'm sure it's been in Medicine Hat too, fellas. We always got to start with the weather. That's important. Winter is finally here. But Logan, let's jump right into it, my friend. Let's take our listeners through your journey in football. Obviously, I alluded to it at the beginning. We grew up playing some ball together, but what really appealed to you in football and what got you into it?
honestly, I was recruited to play football at like age 7 to play Atom football by a soccer parent. Um, he saw me on the field and was just like, "We need this big guy to play football." So my parents signed me up for football the next year, and that was the start of my football career. I started playing in Atom, and I loved it. And I wasn't very good when I started. A lot of kids that I played with actually whooped my butt growing up when I was really young. And I just came up through the ranks and gradually got playing better and having better technique when I got into Bantam and playing for the St. Mary's Colts. I loved it. We had a great team, great leadership for a young team, and it was awesome. And then worked my way up into high school where I played both sides of the ball as a lineman, and it was awesome. A lot of seniors in our grade 12 year, which was fantastic, as you guys know. And unfortunately, we didn't have the season we wanted, but that's the way it works out sometimes.
Hey, we still won the most games we ever did in high school in our senior year. I'll give us that. It was only 4 or 5, but it was still the most.
Yeah, I believe we went 5-5 that year, and I think that's the best record McCoy has held since like 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh boy.
like it was bad, and it's still not great, unfortunately. But
I remember. Oh, sorry.
I go back when I can and help coach all the time. I love seeing the kids and like just helping out. And most of the coaches there are really open to having anybody come out and help, which is really nice.
I still remember when we got our first and only victory in grade 11 and we stormed the field.
Yeah.
Basically and we were the away team. So it was like Juju Smith-Schuster dancing on the Bills logo. It's like, okay.
They do that in the pros, man. When I remember when Miami made sure back in like 2007 that they weren't winless, they celebrated like they won the Super Bowl. You got to do it.
Yeah.
Logan, so take us through the high school experience. And when did you realize like, hey, I'm getting pretty good at this, and how'd that progress?
It actually kind of just started with a dream. I just loved playing football. It was such an emotional outlet for me. And I actually wrote on a Post-it note that I will go pro when I was 15 years old. And I stuck that on my bathroom mirror. And I read it every day, every morning when I got ready. And I just worked my butt off to try and get as good as I could. I was always in the weight room. I was always at practice. I tried to never miss, even when I had broken legs in high school. Like I was always there and trying to do and learn everything I could.
That sounds like a movie. That's so sick. I love it.
Manifestation. That is awesome, dude.
It was a lot, and I really loved it. But like when I was there, like breaking my legs in high school, I broke both my legs at separate times in one semester in high school. I was on crutches for like 22 weeks, and I still like refused to not go to the weight room. It was the only outlet I had. I would always be in the weight room lifting, and I had a very huge upper body and very weak legs after that. It was horrible. So I don't recommend that. Don't overtrain too much in that aspect.
Man, that's awesome though. I really love that. I didn't know that. But it all paid off because when we played together, I just remember you being excellent on the defensive line. You mentioned you played both offensive and defensive line. But I remember the defensive line, Logan Wall, and you're killing it. And you had some options to choose from coming out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the recruiting process like for you? I'm sure it was a little bit different than the soccer dad.
Yeah, definitely a big step up from Adam days. But from there, I was recruited initially by a lot of junior teams. The Okanagan Sun were really interested in me with their head coach at the time, Shane Beatty. the VI Raiders were also quite interested. They flew me out for a spring camp, and I really enjoyed myself out there, and I thought I performed really well, but they were kind of leaning towards putting me on offensive line. And then the Calgary Colts, there was a local recruiter at a different school who reached out to me, and we got pretty close, and he decided that I should come out. And I actually missed the spring camp for the Calgary Colts because I was in Mexico at the time, but they were still willing to take me. So my first experience with the team was at main camp, and we had 3D linemen because of injuries, so we had to run a 3-4. And I remember getting bullied my rookie camp. Oh, it was horrible. Like there was one play where I was up against like a third-year guy and a fifth-year guy who practiced with the Stampeders, and they blew me up like 20 yards downfield. And I was fighting that whole time, and I could not do anything.
Oh man,
it was a rude awakening to that level, but it was. I always liked the challenge, so I was all in for it, and I realized how much harder I had to work after that.
That's what you need. You need that punch in the mouth.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It reminds me of Jarrett Stidham on the Patriots.
Oh God, don't take it
don't
there.
even.
Yeah, that's an insult to Logan.
Yeah.
I have to say one more recall to high school, which it probably won't be the last one. I remember when going into a game against Crescent Heights, we were keying on friend of the pod, Connor McGough.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, Logan Wall, you are shadowing that man. And I was on film duty because I had some kind of injury at the time. Right. And so I remember being up there on like the old Methanex box. And I remember looking down, first play of the game, they tossed to Connor, and no offense, Connor, you blew him up. Like it was like, I was like, holy crap, we might win this game. We didn't. But for that brief second, that brief moment in time when you met him right as he caught the ball in the toss, there was hope, Logan. And I just got to say, man, like you balled out on the D line. I'm glad you stuck to your guns and tried to follow that through.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite games in high school. I remember that play, actually. That was one of my favorite plays because I knew like my whole job was to cover Connor and make sure he doesn't score touchdowns. And that's a big job. That's a big ask. So I went after it, and yeah, they threw a swing pass for him, and I teed off on it, and I was like my highlight hit in high school, and on a guy who plays in the CFL. So I'll take that to my grave. Like
there you go, man.
That's bragging rights for me. So.
Man, I know you guys are all Colts, but no Viking slander on here, all right?
Oh, there's no
slander.
Keep
you honest, okay? I'm gonna keep you a little honest. No, that's awesome, Logan. I want to jump into coaching end of thing and ends of things. Oh my goodness! Tell us a little bit about getting into coaching and like what was that experience like after you were done your playing career and jumping in at like McCoy and such.
Mm-hmm. So coaching for me, I've always wanted to be a coach ever since I was a young kid. I always thought that I would bring a good energy to that. And with that, I took some coaching classes in high school online, and I really got into it then. And then from there, I actually looked for volunteer work with the Colts to like help with coaching and like in the community and stuff like that. So my first real experience with coaching was actually Senior Bowl tryouts for the Team South. And that was a lot of fun. I got to run the whole D-line, the whole camp, complete freedom. And that was like, I'd never coached before. So this was a huge thing for me. And I was going up against our actual Calgary Colts coaches. So I really had to step it up. And that was another rude awakening for me in that aspect to really coach the mentality that you need to be at, especially at an all-star camp tryout like that. Everyone is looking to do their best and try their hardest. And that's the top kids in the country, or well, in the province, but Alberta has fantastic football among the country. We have almost always have one of the top high school teams, either Notre Dame or St. Francis in Calgary. And there's St. Xavier in Edmonton. That's really good. And like tons of talent comes out of Alberta, which is great.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned some of those high school levels, Logan, and I want to get your take on it from playing and the coaching aspect, but in your mind, what does the grassroots level of football need to do better in terms of development and coaching to have these Canadian athletes succeed beyond high school? Because it's not even just the big centers like Edmonton, Calgary, or Medicine Hat and Lethbridge that pump out great players. I remember Raymond would have consistently great teams year after year. I know you got teams in Tabor and Brooks and, all over the province, essentially. Grand Prairie, who we met in the provincial final back in grade 9. Like there's a lot of great talent. and it's spread out so thin, but like what in your mind could the grassroots level do better that you believe it's something they could start maybe next season if they just kind of put their mind to it?
Honestly, I think allowing them to have spring football in even small communities would be a huge help for grassroots football in general, and just developing the kids more. It gives them more time, more reps at practice, and more practice time in general, more scrimmage time. And like having leagues like that in Calgary and Edmonton has shown to be very effective. But I think if we could bring that into smaller city centers, or including like small towns like Brooks and Raymond and Tabor, and like just getting groups together to play, I think would be a lot of help to grassroots football.
I think you're totally right, because even Zach will know KJ was on here a couple weeks ago, Kamar Jordan, and he mentioned, back in Pennsylvania, it's just something in the States they live and breathe. And, there's no lack of talent here. It's just, the resources available to the talent that we have. And so I think you make a great point. And there's some I didn't know like flag and touch football was so big up here in Calgary, but it'd be great to bring something like that to the smaller city centers as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, sir. I know Zach has his league going for out of shape guys like me, but I know it'd be great for the kids too. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
That makes tons of sense too. Getting more exposure out there, because when you think about it, the season runs at best from like August to November, and that's on it's only a couple months out of the year, and kids kind of like they've got their academics and stuff they got to focus on. So getting more reps, like you said, I really like that idea, and it's still super, I want to say easy to implement, because you just it's all volunteer coaches anyways. You just try to, frick, the amateur agency will coach if we got to.
Absolutely. I'd love to be a part of that one day.
There we go. Beautiful. So with that being said, Logan, what from the coaching side, from the playing side, whichever you choose, what have been some of the biggest takeaways that you have from football?
That's a tough question for me, because I started so young, and there's so many things that I couldn't even remember that I learned from football. But I think learning like a proper work ethic that you take in every aspect of your life is super helpful. The discipline, the coachability is super helpful. Being able to communicate and be a part of a team and all be on the same page with, 11 other guys on the field is huge. And that's not a small task. So being that organized and managing a team together, and then from the coaching perspective, like learning how to communicate with kids effectively and understand their point of view so you can better coach them, and learning leadership qualities, I think is probably one of the biggest takeaways for me personally. I was a captain most of the time I played football, and I loved it. It was amazing for me. It was a lot of pressure, obviously, because you always look up to the guys who are better on the team, especially young teams. They just pick the best guy on the team and make him a captain. But I always felt like I had to work for it. And I always made sure I was leading by example, not just words. I was always one of the quieter guys on the field, but I would light you up in practice if you were taking a play off.
You did that to me, actually. So yes, I remember you used to be, like you said, a pretty quiet guy. So when you yelled at me, I was like, oh, that's not Logan. I don't know but that's the football
Sometimes
Logan.
if I'm
that's
on
good
the field,
though.
I can be a different person sometimes. Yeah. And even as a coach, I'm definitely a lot different. I'm not a screamer, which is good, but I definitely kind of get in your face sometimes and a little physical, but just to get the point across.
Actually, I do remember you getting face to face with our coach in high school. That was super funny.
Yeah, I've had a few coaching incidents, and it was only ever when coaches kind of crossed a personal line with me, or if I was having a bad day on top of things, and I just really couldn't handle it. But I always did pride myself on being coachable, but I did have a reputation for kind of
that's all. I think everyone needs to have, that switch of, when to be that aggressive style, come forward, help lead in that way. And then also having that quiet presence. I think a lot of guys try to overcompensate in one and, not have those two levels. And that's great to hear. I've seen you play, Logan, and it's fun. And, I'm going to jump into a little bit of a deeper topic here. And I just want to say, prior to jumping into it, I really respected and enjoyed the time. For those listeners that are listening, Logan and I lived together for some time in Lethbridge, and we had some deep talks. We really got to know each other, and it was a great time. And, you know, jumping into this topic, it's something important to me, and I know it's very important to Logan. So it's a serious one, and I want to talk about it. So prominent professional athletes have come forward over the last number of years on their mental health struggles and how it relates to them in professional sports. But I think something it gets swept under the rug on the mental health on a high school and collegiate high school and collegiate athletes. What role has sports played in your mental health, and at what points do you feel it helped or hindered you in that journey?
I would say sport overall has been a huge help for my mental health. For those who don't know, I recently just came out publicly and acknowledged the fact that I have been diagnosed with severe depression as well as borderline personality disorder. And I've been dealing with that for a long time. I was diagnosed with depression when I was 13. I'd been on dozens of antidepressants now, and it's been something I've lived with for a long time. But sports in general have been so helpful for me as an emotional outlet and a way to really physicalize how I'm feeling, especially football, because I can be as aggressive as I want in football. It was huge for me. It was the only place I could ever actually take my anger out and not get in trouble for it. And it was so helpful for me for so long. And I think there was a turning point when I broke my legs, actually, where I realized I needed to be more than just a football player sometimes. And I really needed to come and understand that. And I didn't really fully understand that until later in my football career, when I was getting recruited by the Calgary Dinos after my 3 years with the Colts. I started struggling a lot more. And it just became more and more prominent and more stressful being a student athlete and kind of getting ready for the season. And I spent a whole off season with the Dinos training, and it was a week outside of main camp, just before school starts, basically. And I had to tell the coach that I couldn't play anymore because of my mental health. And that was really, really hard for me. But I think it was probably the best decision I ever made for me at the same time. And it's a hard thing to admit now, but I'm looking back on it. It's been 3-4 years now. And I learned a lot from that experience. And I learned a lot what sport can do for mental health, but I also learned what it can't do for mental health. And I think that is what a lot of people need to realize when your identity becomes so consumed with this one singular activity that it can be dangerous for your mental health. It can be very easy to spiral off of any failure or fault from that one thing. So I think it's really, really important to understand that about yourself and learn to take it out as yet use sport as an outlet as best you can, but also withdraw into yourself sometimes too, and understand that you're more than just an athlete too.
I think
That's
go ahead, Ozzy.
I was just going to say it's good to have that self-awareness that you had, because as much as you identify as that athlete and you want to make those other, like that Logan that had the sticker on the mirror that you're going pro, you want to make that come true. You do have to put yourself first. I was going to ask Steve if you had something you can jump in. I was going to ask him just in terms of football, like I feel like no other sport that I've played, and I played hockey too. I feel like that is a team sport that really brings people together. You get your position groups, those are your boys. You get your offense or your defense together. Those are your guys. I'm curious what it's like what your experience was like, Logan. And we never spoke about this in high school or anything, but what was your experience like battling with the mental health issues in high school and through junior? Did you find that the support was there from your guys, or was it, because I know it can be a little aggressive, like the guys like to rag on each other. It could be like the bunch of alphas, but what was your experience like with that?
Personally, I never found it really to be a safe space to open up, just with the culture that competitive nature brings out in people. Like you never want to show weakness ever, right? Like that's just being a football player and a competitive athlete in any sport, you don't want to show weakness. And I think that at that high level, it's so ingrained in you by then that you really can't even open up to some of the other people around you. And obviously, I don't think that's the healthiest way to deal with it, but that's how I was dealing with it at the time. I was keeping it in, and I was just trying to look after myself. I had one teammate that I also worked with during the days, and he knew a bit more than other people, and he was a lot more understanding, but that was more of just a personal relationship dynamic than compared to just a teammate. So
that opens up a very deep crest of issues with the culture that football has, but I don't know if we can unpack that here on the pod today, but that's a good thing to shed light on.
We can shed a little bit of light on it. I think we've seen a transition now, like Zach mentioned to it in his question. You've seen, people like Kevin Love with the Cavaliers come out and openly talk about their mental health. It's not as taboo now, but I think to undo decades worth of culture that, insists on being the alpha and what a man really is, and, what you're supposed to be on a football team, a hockey team, or a baseball team, it's going to take a long time to undo those, decades of pounded in culture like that. So I think, taking those steps, and even, what we're doing on this podcast right now is big, because I hope for any high school athlete hearing this, that you don't have to wait until you're, Kevin Love to come out and talk about your mental health struggles. It's something you can talk to with, a trusted teammate, a coach, or a counselor tomorrow. And I think that's really important, because it's still there, right? Like, it's still, people aren't still fully comfortable talking about that yet. And, I take my hat off to all the professional athletes who have opened that up, but I think it's important to shed light on that on an earlier age, even, because I just don't think we're seeing enough of it right now. And
totally. I actually looked into it a little bit and started understanding, like, NCAA hasn't done a ton of studies on mental health in their athletes, but they have done a few. And there's been a lot of student initiatives that have done studies on it too, because they have been struggling so much, and they're curious to know how many other people are struggling too. And when I look at the numbers, it was pretty blowing. Like 69% of student athletes usually have some symptoms of mental illness, usually depression or anxiety. And a lot of that is inflicted from their environment, because mentally speaking, these people are the most, disciplined and hardworking people, and they have a very strong mind. They wouldn't be there without it. On top of that, they're doing all the things that they should be doing to maintain health, like staying active, eating well, studying, get the right amount of sleep, all of these things. So all these things contribute into mental illness. And with that, they're doing everything they can, and they're still showing symptoms. That has to be an environmental factor at that point. And I think that's something that needs to be acknowledged in sports in general.
That's totally right. And I think you mentioned, football in the weight room or your sport being an outlet, but the point where the outlet all of a sudden becomes your identity, I think, is where a lot of athletes run into problems. And, you see it with a lot of professional athletes. Once they retire, a lot of them look around like, what the hell do I do now? Definitely. I think it's more, those are important stories to shed light on, but it's also important for cases such as yourself where, not every U Sports or CJFL or NCAA athletes going pro. And so it's important to diversify your identity, so to speak. I don't know if that's maybe too heavy of a way to say it, but it's important to do those things, because I think, if all your eggs are in that one basket identity wise, it can be very tough, like you said, when you have those failures.
Absolutely. Like you're so invested in it, in that team, in that sport, and any little failure, any fault in practice, any missed drill, any bad step, any fundamental mistake, you're kicking yourself for it, right? Every time, because you're going to be your own worst critic at the end of the day, and you know what you did wrong. So you're going to keep going and pushing yourself and pushing yourself and pushing yourself. And eventually your mind in that environment is going to start kind of twisting and kind of coming self-deprecating almost, and really kind of hurting yourself. And I think people need to understand that more, and they need to be able to recognize that. And that's a big ask for a lot of people, to have that self-awareness, to really recognize and come forward with something.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ozzy.
I was going to say too, you had put it really eloquently, Logan, earlier when you said that anytime you show weakness, that's kind of like the culture of football and sport in general kind of ingrains in you. And this isn't an attack on these sports. It's just the fact of the matter. I think one thing that needs to be, I hope that with having you on and our connections, and when we spread this out, a lot of young coaches and players will be listening to this. I think that one thing that we need to take away, and people more broadly need to take away, is that showing like opening up about these issues with your teammates, with your coaches, the coaches fostering this environment for players. I think they need to understand, and people need to understand, that sharing and opening up about that isn't weakness. It's going to make everybody stronger. And that's kind of the hope that I have in talking about this with you and having you on. So yeah, I appreciate you opening up today and us being able to kind of get that message out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate the platform to talk about this. It's a very important topic to me personally, and I think it does need some attention. Definitely. There's a huge stigma about it, and it needs to be dealt with, in my opinion. I agree that it shouldn't be seen as weakness. I think it should be looked at as more of like an injury, like it needs to be treated and dealt with so you can get back there and be the best athlete that you can be the biggest role that you can play for the team. You know, you need to be able to contribute, and you always want to be the best that you can. You're going to be competitive by nature as an athlete. So I think you have to take that into account as well, not just your physical health.
Logan, let me ask you this then, because I haven't been in that U Sports environment or even, CJFL. Aside from the culture of football, which, like we mentioned, is going to take a long time to, unravel that to where it's a more, like Ozzy said, a well-fostered environment to come out about those things. In your mind, when you're going through what you were going through and playing at that level, what resource do you wish was available to you? Like if there's maybe, like, I know some teams have like a team chaplain, like a minister, or like, for prayer and stuff for the, more religious folk, or would you, prefer a sports psychologist there? Is there something that maybe you would have reached out to, or do you think even with having like a team psychologist or a team counselor, that stigma still would have been there? It still would have been tough to go visit that. Like, I'm curious as to maybe what, and you don't have to have an answer, because obviously this takes a long time to figure out, and teams are with millions of dollars at disposal trying to figure out how to solve these issues. But I guess I'm wondering if there is something that could have been there for you that you wish you had in those playing days.
I definitely would have loved a sports psychologist on staff. I think that would have been so helpful as a resource. I was actually seeing a sports psychologist when I was in junior football, and wasn't quite related to the exact mental health stuff, but I was working through some things and understanding it a bit more. And that brought a lot of help to me in my last year, and really helped me kind of buckle down and get ready to try and make the jump to U Sports. And that was kind of why I did it. I needed something a little bit more to push me to get to that next level. So I think that could be a huge help, as well as just, having therapists or counselors, someone on the team to talk to, even if it's a physical therapist. Like, they had to take some mental health stuff in college and university anyway, right? Like, that's health studies. It's going to be a part of it. So hopefully they're qualified to deal with some things, or at least point you in the right direction of some real support.
I couldn't put that really any better, Logan. I think that's really key. Do you feel like maybe even, I'm not referring to your parents, but I'm just parents in general, like, do you think maybe from a young age there's too much of a push to, like, I see it more in hockey than I've seen it in football, honestly, and maybe that's just because we live in Canada, but like, every parent thinks their kid's going to the NHL. Do you think that pressure from the family home is also very impactful? Did you see that with teammates or even within yourself?
Absolutely. There was always a push to, be a good athlete and try hard and always do your best. And, obviously goals and touchdowns and sacks were always rewarded as a, pat on the back kind of thing. And when you mess up, then they usually call you out on that too. So it definitely goes both ways, I think. And for a lot of people, I think they can have family troubles as far as like pressuring you into sports. I know a lot of parents always want their kids to play the same sports they played, and they always push them to do better. And they start them really young now, like 2 or 3, playing soccer and, football in the States, even like they start young, and it gets to be a lot, I think, for these kids. And I think it can break a lot of them before they ever get the chance to really show their colors and really be the top athlete that they can be, which is unfortunate because there's so much potential out there.
It's a sad moment when you look at it that way, and it's like we're not playing for fun anymore at that point. It's getting them in there, getting their talent shown at a young age. It's like, go have fun, find out what you like to do. And
yeah,
I hear you, Logan.
Yeah, I as far as the recruiting process went for me when I was a young person, like grade 8 or 9, I reached out to an organization in the States because that's where I wanted to go to play football. And I never ended up making that happen, but I was recruited by a couple schools, had a few phone calls, usually Div 2, Div 3, NAIA, but there was a couple Div 1 schools, and it was great. But they told me when I signed up that I was already late to the ball game, that I was 2-3 years late. And I'm like, I'm just trying to have fun and learn techniques still. Like, how are people getting recruited already? Like that's blows my mind to how young they actually start recruiting, 5-star athletes.
Wild.
God, yeah, we'd probably need a full other episode to unpack.
That blows my mind.
Going back. What was that show on Netflix again?
Last Chance U?
Not Last Chance U. That's another good one. But there was one
the
like
coaching
the
one?
Friday Night Tykes or something like that. Was it?
Yeah.
yeah.
I watched that, man.
Yeah, some of the pressure they put on those kids, man, and like it's just it's mind blowing, honestly. Like just the environment that some of these coaches foster, and it's really tough because every coach, even like 32 teams in the NFL or the 9 teams in the CFL or the various university programs in the States and Canada, it really starts, and the philosophy and the culture that's built there starts with the head coach. And it really depends on what kind of system is already ingrained there. And it's really tough to, like I said, it's decades of conditioning of what the way football culture is now. And being the Seahawks fan, I point to it. And, Pete Carroll's really fostered a healthy, positive environment in Seattle. I believe they have multiple sports psychologists on hand. You look at a lot of other teams are starting to adapt those kind of new school ways of thinking. It's really tough for some of these other programs because I'm sure cash is an issue, but I think it's really important, even like the onus has to be on the head coach or the coaches there to really foster a positive environment where there's, you can still hold your players accountable to a certain standard and level of play without, degrading them to the point where it's impacting their mental health. And I think, just getting into coaching myself, and I know Zach and Ozzy have also dabbled in that as well, or are in the process of going to be by next year once COVID kind of ends things, or once COVID ends. COVID ending things would be a different story. That'd be awful. Anyways, but I think these young coaches that get into the game, I think we have to maybe put it on ourselves to really start fostering a more positive relationship with the players. And so that, the first step is with ourselves. We can, hope that our team maybe has the budget for a counselor or something like that. But I think it really starts with these coaches getting the ball rolling and fostering that positive environment. What was the environments like after high school for you that, were they more welcoming, or was it still pretty old school in that regard?
As far as the Calgary Colts go, it was a little bit more old school. We had Coach Matt Blocker, or what he was known as, Coach Snoop to us. And he had quite a different approach to kind of coaching, more of John Gruden-esque kind of approach.
Okay.
But we always
knock on wood if you're with me. Sorry.
And it was always, you had to have a good attitude. You had to be the meanest guy on the field. You always had to be aggressive. And I really like that coming from the high school environment I played in, because I felt limited in the Catholic high school, the clean cut, proper Notre Dame type gold helmet stuff, and it was nice to get away from that for a little bit and have a little attitude playing. And then when I stepped up and started being around the Dinos, it was a lot different. It was a lot more of a professional feeling. They're a very, very high-end program in Usports football. They're, I don't even know how many Western Conference finals they've won, or Mitchell Bowls or anything like that. Like, they're crazy as far as that goes. They have amazing stats and Vanier stats, and so many CFL players come out of there. They just pump CFL players from that school, and it's great. But being a part of that organization for the limited time that I realized that that's a different level for a lot of kids. And to come straight out of high school to something like that, I think I definitely wouldn't have been ready. I'm really happy I took that middle ground and kind of took a step back or not back, but took a step in a different direction so I could get there. And it was really, really helpful for me. But I guess the pressure of that and that atmosphere kind of took the fun away from football for me. Obviously, I only spent an off season with them, so I didn't get to actually hit anybody. So the fun was limited, but it was a lot of weight room and waking up early and staying late at practices and working with quarterbacks, understanding an offense. There was a steep learning curve for me because when I was at main camp with them, or spring camp with them, sorry, I was put on the first string roster as the sixth man, ready to play any position, but they wanted me to play center. And center is got a lot to look at. He calls coverages, he calls backers, he calls fronts. He's all over the place, and he has to adjust the schemes. And I had to know their playbook inside and out, every audible call and everything. So I would go in on my own and I would study all the time with their O coordinator at the time, Ryan Sheehan. I always got made fun of showing up to meetings looking ratty because I just get off work, and it was just what I had to do to kind of keep up with it. But it got to a point where it was kind of taking the joy out of football for me, which really sucked because that's the last thing I wanted to happen to my favorite sport.
So Logan, transitioning then, if you were to go into a coaching role, how would you help balance that? And, whether you end up coaching at a university level, if you want to coach, Atom or Bantam, how would you balance that in yourself and, the accountability versus, making sure it's still fun for your players?
I think, having practice time be strictly, aggressive and intense, I think is very effective. But I also think outside of that, you need to foster a better environment, because obviously on the field, everyone's flying 100 miles an hour and testosterone's high and things are going to happen and you can't control everything out there. But the things you can control, the attitude in the weight room or the film room, having meetings outside of that with your own groups are super important. Me personally, I learned a lot from coaching when I coached a wheelchair basketball team, the Medicine Hat Mustangs. It was a lot of fun, and it was a very, very steep learning curve for me to understand that. And I really enjoyed it. And it made me realize that there's so much more to coaching and so much more to being a mentor. And I think that's what the approach needs to be more now, is being a mentor and a role model, not just screaming at kids for technique and fundamentals.
Well said.
That is a nice way of putting a cherry on top of that. I was going to ask this. I don't know, you might have already answered it in the last question I had asked you, but if you had to kind of bundle all of your experience with football up into one lesson, Logan Wall, what would you say the greatest lesson football has taught you?
That's a tough one. I'm going to use a weird analogy for it. But I would say the strength of the wolf is the pack. And I think for me, that stuck a lot when I realized how much help I needed and how much support I needed. And reaching out and getting that, I learned a lot from football. Like, you're so much stronger when you have support, so much stronger. And that meant a lot to me for a long time, like having 80 teammates, 80 brothers who have my back no matter what happens on the field or inside, outside of football. Like, they're always with you. They're around you at school. Like, you're together all the time. And no matter what happens, you're always going to stand up for each other and protect each other. And like that, knowing that is a lot and really helpful. But I think that needs to just extend another step further into like, emotional vulnerability for some people, which is, tough for men because we're fostering an environment to always be strong and never show weakness, just like sports. But it's, I think it needs to happen a little bit more now, and people are starting to understand that.
Yeah, because there's a bit of a juxtaposition there, right? Because you have your 80 teammates, your brothers, right, who have your back no matter what. Like if someone come and shoves you in the locker, like, you got your boys with you or something,
Yeah.
right? But you're mentioning, because I don't want to make it seem like we're talking on both sides. So we got that support, but you're saying it needs to go a step farther in regards to being able to go to your teammate and being like, hey man, I'm struggling with depression, and not having them be like, what the fuck, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it needs to be a lot more open and just willing to have that conversation, and about any side of mental health, right? Like, there's addiction is a big thing with athletes. Binge drinking, depression, and anxiety is really, really high. Like, and just being able to say something helps make you feel like you're not alone, and that in that situation is so helpful.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic lesson to take away. And I think that, I can't speak for Steve and Zach, but I know that that's one of the biggest things I took away in football, as well as the perfect analogy of the wolf is as strong as the pack, if I got that correct.
Yeah.
Because you gotta work together with 11 other guys on the offense.
Yeah.
And but yeah, there's so much more to it.
I'm getting that tattooed on my back, man. That's not a weird analogy at all. That's a great quote, man. You couldn't have said that better.
Yeah.
Man,
thanks, guys.
There's that mentorship coming out and that great coaching ability. I can't wait to hear more about that on the outside, because I'm trying to get into coaching more, and I'd love to hear what you've learned through all those lessons and stuff you've been going through. That's awesome. Now moving into a little bit, it's a little lighthearted on this one, and you knew it was coming. You knew this question was coming, because it is kind of our staple.
Yep.
So I'm going to throw it right at you, Logan. Does ketchup belong on KD?
I don't know, because I don't eat craft dinner.
Oh, come on, brother.
I haven't touched it since I was like 4 or 5. I can't stand it. I will not eat it.
What
happened?
Did you have a bad experience with it?
Did somebody give you tomato craft dinner? Because that stuff was terrible.
No, it was. I think I had the flu at the time, and I would just. It was not a good pairing. So
poor associations will fuck you right up with that stuff, man. Like Thanksgiving, had a great Thanksgiving meal this past Thanksgiving, and then got violently ill afterwards. Thought I had COVID. I had to get tested, and then. I'm going back to it, guys. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have Thanksgiving food for a long time. Like, I don't know when the next time that comes along that I'm able to have stuffing. Like, I'm just associating that now with how ill I felt that night and all that. And I'm just like, goddamn, like the test came back negative, by the way. I never had COVID, but I understand where you're coming from. A negative association will screw things right up.
For sure.
Man, a quick shout out to my girlfriend, Tiana. Anything fish related happened to her, but it's to the extent now that I love fish. I love seafood. So it's ugly when I get into it, and the shellfish is flying, the everything's going crazy. Right. And it could be like 3 or 4 hours, and I'll walk up to her and be like, "Hi, babe. Hey." And then she's like, "Oh, you've been," like almost throwing up in my face, because of a time when she was like 3, some about a saltine cracker. She'll tell you. I don't know. Ask her about it. For everyone, Tiana, I love you. We'll end that one there, but same shit, different pile.
So Logan, I'm making a T-chart with all our not all our hosts, all our guests that we've had on, including ourselves, and there's pro ketchup on KD and there's anti ketchup on KD. So if you were to just imagine what that would taste like, I guess, where would you fall on that? If you were to just are you open to the idea of it?
You just got to put them
hard
on
question.
the bottom.
I appreciate the hard questions, but I think I have to go anti KD or anti ketchup on KD.
Logan, my boy.
Just tomatoes and cheese. Yes and no. I don't know. I don't get it.
You don't have a cheeseburger with ketchup, Logan? Is that what you're telling me?
Not like strictly just like, do you have a block of cheese and squirt some ketchup on it and take a bite? Like,
no, God.
Steve, tomatoes on your you eat tomatoes, don't you?
Steve doesn't like tomatoes on his burgers. I don't either.
I just started having tomatoes in my subs. That's a big step for me.
Very mature, very grown up.
Thanks, man. Actually,
damn. That vitamin K.
Logan, Quick question. You used to order a sub at Subway, and I remember it caught me so off guard. It was like a pizza sub, and you used to put something on there. And
Pickles.
I'm trying to remember. Pickles on the pizza sub, man. I
Yep.
got to try that.
It's a weird one. You gotta have a lot of pickles. That's just the balance of it. But I love it. It's a weird. You probably shouldn't take anything that I eat as like proper, because I have the weirdest appetites. Like, so strange. Like I can't be trusted with that.
Well, I'm curious enough. I want to try it. I might do it this week. I have a $25 gift card to Subway, so
Food
that one's
review.
on them.
Food review.
Food
there we
review,
go.
yeah, not a bad idea. We all get
Food
pizza
review.
subs.
Logan comes on and
Yes.
has ketchup on craft dinner for the first time since he was
And-
three.
And
And
one
the- and the
without
pizza-
ketchup. Yeah.
and the pizza pickle sub.
And the
too.
pizza one, yeah.
Well, when COVID's over, we'll do this, or we can do it over Zoom, like everything else is done nowadays. Logan, one last
Everybody
question
would
for you.
love that.
Yeah. Noted Packers fan. I said at the beginning, I remember watching the NFC Championship with you, Seattle versus Green Bay. Seattle had that nice comeback, much to your dismay.
Yeah.
I
Unfortunately,
was there with you. Yeah.
this year, Aaron Rodgers is looking like that bad man again. I'm putting you on the spot right now. We need you to make a Super Bowl prediction. Are your Packers going to the Super Bowl? If so, who are they playing? If not, what's the matchup?
It's a tough one. I don't think the Packers are going to make Super Bowl personally. I don't think they have it in them this year. I don't think they have a strong enough defense or running game to really necessitate a championship team like that. I think there's a lot better dimensional teams that like have a lot more going on offensively, defensively, but I honestly haven't watched a ton of football this year, and I've been kind of neglecting it because I don't really have cable here. So
That's fair.
I also
Freaking Saskatchewan, you hate it.
I don't know who.
Cleveland Browns.
You can just Cleveland versus Seattle. That's a safe bet.
The Patriots have a 2% chance to get in if you want to just go for the underdog.
I wouldn't, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't put my money on the Patriots this year. That's for sure.
Bye, Ozzy.
Damn it, Logan, you're right.
I'm gonna say Pittsburgh and who else is doing really good?
Seattle, New Orleans.
Washington football team.
Didn't the Saints just lose to Philly? Like what happened there? Yeah,
Rams.
to Jalen Hurts. Yeah,
The
I was
Giants.
maybe I'll go Saints. I'll go Pittsburgh Steelers and Saints.
That'd be cool. Big Ben
Yeah.
versus Drew
That'd be
Brees.
pretty cool.
That's two vets going
Yeah,
at
man.
it.
Yeah.
Hey, I had the Saints winning the Super Bowl. Let's go.
I remember you had that.
Love it.
We got to revisit those. Ozzy has the Colts going all the way.
Zach laughs as if they're a bad pick. Buddy, they're going to kill it.
The
They're
problem is,
killing it
Ozzy,
right
you
now.
have them beating the 49ers. That's the tough part.
Okay, well, ignore that part.
Yeah. Logan, where can everyone find you on social media? I don't remember. I don't think you're active on Twitter, but
No, I don't have Twitter. I do have Instagram, Logan_Wall_51. That's pretty much most of my social media. Other than you can kind of find me on Facebook. I don't really use it much anymore. Kind of getting away from social media.
hey, that's
but,
fair.
For you, man.
Yeah, I'm actually hoping to reach out with more platforms now about mental health. I know Strikeout Stigma I've been talking to lately about trying to be a spokesperson or an ambassador or just get involved with the organization and try and help out there. I know they do a lot of what I could see as helpful, and I want to try and contribute with them as much as I can in the future. And then as well in Medicine Hat, there's another men's group for opening up. They just do like a weekly kind of check-in, walk your dog, hang out kind of stuff. And it's
That's
called
cool.
For All the Brothers, and it's put on by a really interesting guy named Fitu. He's quite a character, but he's got a really good heart, and he's looking to make a lot of big changes in Medicine Hat as far as mental health is concerned. And I would love to be able to kind of get my voice out there more on any platforms that would have me. I would love to be able to speak more on this topic and just get the news out.
That's awesome, man. Well, we're glad we could help take that first step, and maybe we'll link it down in the show notes. So Strikeout Stigma is the one, and sorry, I missed the name of the brothers one.
It's For All the Brothers.
For All the Brothers.
Yeah.
For All the Brothers. Okay, I think they have social media pages. I'll link them down in our show notes there. And honestly, man, it's not a stretch to say this is probably one of the most important episodes we've ever done. And I hope anyone who's listening to this gets a lot of value from it. And, you know, if it ever came to it and felt like they had to, just reach out to us, man. We're happy to talk and be that outlet and point you in the right direction. And I'm sure Logan would be happy to speak on that as well. So thank you, Logan, from the bottom of our heart, man. This meant a lot to us, as I'm sure it did you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for taking the time to sit down with me and have these tough conversations and ask the right questions. I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, man. And we're always here, man. We
Absolutely.
freaking love it. We got to do it again.
Yeah. Can't wait.
We'll get you on for the Super Bowl preview episode when the Patriots are getting ready to face the Washington football team in the
Give it
Super
up,
Bowl.
Aussie. Damn. No, but maybe, you know, with CFL happening back on, Logan, we'll get you on for a little CFL preview show or something. This definitely won't be our last time chatting together on this. So thank you again, brother, and all the best and take care.
Yeah, thanks. You guys too. Bye.
Godspeed.